Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, if you could do a little louder, David, I think that would be good.
How about now?
Yeah.
Yes, that's better.
Thank you.
Did you know that thermometers are another item that's being hoarded? You can't get one? Mine was so low, I decided to go buy a new one just in case this was misreading, but you can't get one.
Wow. I run a very low
Yes, that-
temperature too, so I get 98.6. I got a fever.
Okay, we're on the video now. The sound is on, and if everybody could please make sure they mute when they're not talking, I think that would be good for feedback. It's all yours, Myron.
Okay, well, I'll call our special meeting of the Cook County Board of Commissioners to order today for Tuesday, March 31st. Good morning, everyone. I would like to have you mute your phones, and please don't have any audio in the background. And I will read the Pledge of Allegiance, and if you would join me without being on your audio source, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to call on Interim Administrator Rena Rogers to make a special statement about how we conduct these meetings and the authority that we have for it.
This is a special statement about meetings attended by telephone due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It has been determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the related peacetime emergency declaration made by Governor Walz in accordance with Minnesota Statutes, Chapter 12. We have ensured that all members of the body participating in the meeting, wherever their physical location, can hear one another and can hear all discussion and testimony offered at today's meeting. We have also ensured that members of the public present at the regular meeting location of the body can hear all discussion and testimony and all votes of the members of the body. We have urged the public not to attend this meeting in person because of the COVID-19 pandemic and have ensured that members of the public can view and monitor the meeting remotely in real time by broadcasting the meeting on the county's website. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have determined that it is unfeasible for Attorney Molly Hicken, County Attorney Brady Powers, and several members of the Board Commissioners to be physically present at the county boardroom at the Cook County Courthouse. All votes will be conducted by roll call, so each member's vote on issue will be identified and recorded. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to just start off the meeting with some comments as board chair. Someone has, excuse me, but someone has an audio on in the background. If they could double check that. I prepared this statement, and please bear with me. And I'm very sincere and very proud to be part of what's going on with our leadership in the county board as well as the community as well. So I thought I would share with you some thoughts that are not mine, but that I've learned from others. I read somewhere that government leadership should have the following traits for urgent administrative function in times of crisis. Be calm, be alert, be engaged, be informed, be advised, be thoughtful, be decisive, but more importantly throughout that process, to have empathy. According to the best leadership historians and psychology researchers on leadership qualities, empathy is the #1 trait for success in ordinary times, and it is crucial in extraordinary times. I'm so grateful that I've observed this as board chair with our staff, with our leadership teams, and in the community. We have accomplished so much in this last week since we met, and it took remarkable leadership and hard work and teamwork to get to where we're at today. Most of the functions that we need today and planning for tomorrow have been established in our Emergencies Operations Command, and we'll have more updates on that later in our meeting. As I mentioned, so many staff have worked in a collaborative way, providing their expertise and skills, and if not, having them to find them and search them and implement them. So that people understand who have not been involved in this process of the emergency operations phase. Many of us had training in it, but I read somewhere that establishing an emergency operation command has been compared to building the plane while you're trying to fly it. And it's a daunting, and it's a very important thing, and it's constantly moving and can change. I'd like to just, again, I think from the county perspective, thank those in the community that are working so hard providing their essential services. During these times of emotional and psychological stress, it can bring out the worst or the best, and that's when I've seen the best in the community as I interact with people and so forth. We also need to take care of ourselves, which is actually going to help others regarding the exposure of the virus. I'd like to just close my comments with a reference to a quote this week from Edward Fesenthal. He's the editor of Time magazine. I've slightly modified it, but I'll quote as follows. "We are apart, but not alone. We wave and talk across our space. Thanks to all of you for doing your part by taking care of yourself and others appropriately. The questions rise up. How are you holding up? What do you need? How can I help? The answers are always the same. I see you and hear you. We don't know when this storm will pass, but we do know how to help. Without empathy, nothing works." So again, empathy is the important key here, and I hope that we all keep that in mind as we deal with this pandemic and the challenges before us. Thank you for all you do, and this is a good time for us to work together and try to help each other, more so than any other time. I would like to go to the agenda, and I will do a roll call vote. Not a vote, excuse me, a response, asking for a response on if you approve of the agenda that was just amended yesterday. And if you'd like to add another agenda item, then I'll try to note that, and we can deal with it. Again, I'll call on you, and when you're done speaking, would you just please say over? Say over, and mute your phone when you're not responding or talking. Start off with Commissioner Sorley. Any adjustments to the agenda from your point of view?
I do not have any. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. I don't have any adjustments to the agenda. Over.
Commissioner Duker?
No changes. Over.
Commissioner Deschamps?
No changes. Over.
Commissioner Bersheim, no changes. So I would entertain a motion if you would just say your name and state the motion to approve the agenda.
This is Commissioner Mills. I make a motion to approve the agenda.
We have
Over.
a motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Disha, second.
Okay. We'll do a roll call vote on the agenda. We'll start this time with Commissioner Deschamps.
Yep.
Commissioner Duker.
Approved. Over.
Commissioner Mills.
Commissioner Mills, aye. Over.
Commissioner Sorley.
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Bersheim. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We now have a public comment period, and I guess I'll ask if anyone's in the audience.
There's no one here.
Do we have any emails or written comments that have been sent to the courthouse?
No. There have not been.
Okay, so we'll start our agenda. We'll start off with the general fund fourth quarter 2019 report. We'll have a review and presentation by our auditor, and then we will need a motion to accept the report. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you all see. Can you see the entire report, or are you just seeing the portion that's printed out?
Just what printed out, Brady.
Okay. So, I'll just give you a summary. As I look on the computer way over to the right, you can't see that, but the expenses, this is for the entire year of 2019, and this is cash basis with adjustments that we make for things that we know have to be adjusted out, but there are still audit adjustments to be made. So this is the best summary we can give on a cash basis. So our adjusted expenditures for the year of 2019 for the general fund came out, the expenses came out at exactly 100%. The revenues came in at 121% of budgeted, so our net levy cash basis was 74% because of the additional revenue. I will go and just highlight some of those changes, causes of that. In the auditor treasurer's office, that's Department 40, we had additional revenue, 22% above budget. This is primarily the federal reimbursements that the general fund gets, and that's supporting those services in human service. So whenever you see additional costs in human services, we get additional federal revenue. So it reflects that. And also our fees, primarily passports, were very high this year, about 13,000 over budget. So the next, Department 41, General Finance Administration, this is the biggest adjustment to the change to the budgeted numbers, budgeted revenue, was our investments. As you know, the market went up markedly this year, and although we don't share in most of that because of our limited types of investments, we still gained a lot from it. And we were 30 or 83% over what we budgeted. We budgeted 412,000. We took in cash basis 753. Dropping down to the Sheriff's Department, their revenues were 24% higher than budgeted, and for a number of reasons. You have to switch screens, so look at detail.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a grant called NPS, Deputy Hours. I'm not sure. I'll have to ask the sheriff exactly what that is. The Grand Portage Deputy payment, this is an adjustment that needs to move to a department that we have for Grand Portage Deputy. So it's really not an addition, but it's an addition to the 200 budget. And then the K-9 donations were the reasons for that revenue. The expenses in the Sheriff's Department, I'll note, 5% higher than budgeted. and that's primarily due to mileage, which we have now increased for 2020, recognizing those additional miles that are being driven. And the overtime and on-call pay was up significantly, includes negotiated benefits. And those were the main items. Dropping down to the land department, there were some overages there, which I'll just basically repeat because you heard those from Tim last probably August when we were discussing budgets, August or September. A lot of that was in the SCORE recycling program. The business environment changed, the amount of revenues being received for recyclables, and yet the volume was going up tremendously. So their temporary costs for hiring were going up, which we've now remedied by hiring full time. So we got hit both ways, less revenue, but more recyclables and increased expenses there. Nothing really changed from the trend you heard back in August or September when he described that. And the YMCA, the payroll, up, I'm going to flip pages again. Different program. The personal services were up about 18,000, 36% over what we budgeted. Utilities were slightly up. Contract services up 20%. Repairs and maintenance up 48%. And I think we have remedied that in the 2020 budget. And the rest of the overage was the decision last year in May to purchase all the new exercise equipment all at one time. So we made that one-time expenditure for that equipment, which, of course, is part of the negotiation on the new agreement for future years. So the total net increase over budget in that department was 126%. Those are the highlights. So even with that, again, we were at 100% of our budgeted expenditures, and 121% of our budgeted revenues, which left us with a net levy of 74%. A good overall result. Are there any questions?
Okay, we'll go by a roll call on that. For questions on his report, we'll start with Commissioner Mills.
This is Commissioner Mills. I do not have any questions at this time. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner Starley?
Commissioner Starley here. So Brady, our investments, as you said, aren't probably the full market that most people do, but the dive that the market took right now, we're not really affected by that? Over.
Well, we'll be affected because we do have money, sometimes large amounts of money, in money markets when it's short term. And so that is affected by the lower rates and our short term investments. And some of ours that are in agencies, they get called during these events when the market goes down, and then our opportunity to purchase new investments, we can't get that same kind of return. But in general, we're not largely affected because we're not allowed to go out into the stock markets per se. we can invest in cash, CD, treasuries, and some federal-approved agencies. So our effects are limited as regards the market changes, but it will affect us for sure, but not hugely.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Dukert?
This is Commissioner Dukirk. I do not have any questions. Brady, thank you very much for putting this together, and whoever put the packet together that the sheets are all facing in the right direction, thank you very much. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner DeShaw?
No questions.
And Commissioner Bershine does not have any questions, so thank you, Brady, for your report and your work. I would entertain a
Mr.
motion.
Chair, I would ask for, it's in our policies, so I would just ask for a motion to accept the report.
Yes, I'm going to do that now. Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, yep. So I would entertain a motion to accept the report.
This is Commissioner Mills. I make the motion to accept the General Fund fourth quarter 2019 report. Over.
Thank you.
Starley,
Commissioner
support.
Dukirk?
Okay, let's try Commissioner Starley. Did you second?
Yes.
Okay. We'll go there. I thought I heard you first, but thank you. So let's do a roll call. We'll start with you, Commissioner Starley. Excuse me, I don't have anything else on this as well. So, okay, so roll call to approve the motion. Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye, over.
Commissioner Dukert?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. Aye. Over.
Commissioner Starley?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Bershine is aye, over. Thank you. We'll go to deferral of revolving loan payments. And this we need to approve by resolution. And I believe that Mr. Powers will do this as well. Give us the information on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Revolving Loan Fund Committee met last Tuesday, March 24th, to consider aid that the county could make to small businesses. And we had a quorum at that meeting. After a good discussion, the committee voted unanimously to recommend a 6-month deferral of all loan payments with no additional interest to accrue. The effect would be to extend the end date of each loan by 6 months. I'll point out this is not forgiveness in any way. It's just a gap in the payment. In essence, instead of waiting a month for your next payment, this is just waiting 6 months for your payment, and then the amortization schedule will continue as they were originally written and approved for all of the loans. The reasons we discussed were, A, some of our businesses are always struggling to make these payments, partly because that's why this fund is involved. A lot of them are not eligible for full bank funding and may not have those kinds of assets, etc. So that's to be expected. So they are those loans are particularly at risk. The committee wanted to provide some, let's say, aid, psychological aid, one thing that you don't have to worry about during this pandemic, and also to protect the revolving loan fund itself prevent failures, in which case the loan may never be paid back. And by giving a short-term break in payment may allow some of them to not have that problem. And then others that even may be able to survive it, they may be able to survive it better having this small break since their whole business function is taking a break. It seems to be consistent. It's also consistent with the national legislation that put in a lot of short-term forgiveness, unemployment extended, things like that, in order that people keep their employees so that when the pandemic is off, they're able to start up again right away and not prolong the economic downturn. So this had a lot of strong reasons, and it was a unanimous vote. So that's for your consideration.
Hey, I would just like to comment that I'm the representative on that Revolving Loan Fund Committee, and I was not able to attend the meeting because we had a board meeting, but I did have a chance to weigh in on it and really want to commend the people that are members of this committee about their concern for the community as well as other staff, and this is the right thing to do as soon as we could, so I highly endorse it and appreciate the work of our leaders in that area. With that, for any questions, I'll start with, for discussion, Commissioner Dukert.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, obviously.
Okay.
Brady, the first question, what about the accounts that are behind, overdue, and in arrears? Do they have to get caught up first?
Normally they would, but in this case, the decision was to just put a hold in place on everything. They're with the idea that they're already struggling unless they have an outside source of cash that just materialized. They're not going to make any revenue during this period to even catch up.
Okay, and then my next question is, if a business owner wants to continue to make payments, let's say they're okay for making their April and May payment, and then as the outbreak continues, things happen, can they still have their dates pushed out so they don't have to completely restart if they make payments? They're just choosing to make the payment just to stay ahead of it a little bit.
Right. We want to offer this. Some may feel flush. They may have saved up cash and they don't want to extend their loan, or maybe only want to extend it part of that time, and we're going to make adjustments for whatever their situation is.
Okay, I just want to make sure if they can make their April and May payment and then they can't make a June, July, August, that they're okay and they don't get penalized for that. And that is all my questions. Over.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner DeShaw?
Yeah, I think this is a good resolution to pass, but I think it needs to get revisited in 6 months. If this lasts into the midsummer, I don't think they're going to have the ability to start making the payment in September or October. So I would like to have this revisited after the 6-month period and go over it again to make sure everybody's doing okay. Over.
Okay.
Yeah, and that we discussed that exactly that this would be 6 months, and then we'll be looking hard at it again. And it could be that, well, who knows what's going to happen in 6 months. Maybe some of them are fine, some of them are not, and it may not be a blanket as it is now. So exactly, we intend to do that, and that's a good idea.
Mr. Mill? Commissioner Mills? Commissioner Storley?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I applaud the work that the committee certainly has done. Was there any comments or any discussion about zero interest during this period?
There was, and the conclusion was that this first go-around, the best thing for businesses was to not, they could just take this item off their to-do list and set it aside for 6 months. And maybe we talked about at the end of 6 months, maybe interest rate adjustments going forward. But it seemed like the best thing is to just take it off the shelf for the current period since they're not operating, and then we'll visit all of that, lots of options in 6 months.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Bershon, I don't think I have any questions. Again, I did comment, and special thanks to this group. We have a great group that represent a lot of expertise in our community, and they've thought about all the angles in this one. Commissioner Mills, are you back with us? I guess we have lost him.
He is,
So,
go ahead.
I heard a beep. Go ahead if someone wants to comment, or we're ready for a motion.
I was just going to say that,
Mr. Chair, this is Molly Hicken. I think that if we wish to continue the meeting by phone, we do need to adhere to that requirement that all committee members, or excuse me, all board members can hear each other and be heard. Maybe we should make an effort to get Mr. Mills back on the phone.
Mr. Chair, I've been texting with him. He can hear us, so he's somehow, either he's muted or he should just hang up and try to reconnect, and that's what I'm going to suggest. We could take a pause for a second.
Okay, let's be on hold. From what I hear you saying is that we don't apply the rule of the quorum when we have these. So we have to stop the meeting.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
For whatever reason, I could hear you guys still, but you couldn't hear me. So, but I'm here. And may I ask a question?
Yes. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Question I had for Brady, and he answered it ahead of the meeting, but just for the public's knowledge, I asked what effect this would have on our operational budget, and I don't know, Brady, if you want to answer that.
Sure. It doesn't have any effect on our operational budget since the funding for this came from state funds back in the 1980s. And what we're operating off now is the interest earned on that fund, and we have a few $100,000 in that fund at the moment. And so what will happen during this 6 months is we simply won't add to that fund. I don't believe we have any current requests that are even pending. So that fund will just sit static, and then we'll begin collecting money, presumably, and adding back to it again in 6 months.
Thank you.
Okay. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you. That's all.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve this resolution.
Make a motion to offer deferral of revolving loan payments for up to 6 months. Commissioner Mills, over.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Dukirk, second. Over.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call. Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye, over.
Commissioner DeKirk?
Aye, over.
Commissioner Mills?
Commissioner Mills, aye, over.
Commissioner Starley?
Aye, over.
Commissioner Bershon's aye over. It's unanimous approval. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go on to special events permit. This is a discussion only, and we did discuss this in Public Safety and Transportation Committee last week. So we thought we should have a discussion at the board level. And do we have Kristen with us, or is interim Administrator Rogers going to handle this one, or will I?
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, colleagues, and members of the public. This is Kristen, and I am here this morning with a couple of items. I'll start with the special events permit discussion. Now, one of the responsibilities of the Highway Department and what brings me here is that we do have the local authority to regulate or prohibit processions or assemblages on highways. This is known as our special road use permit process, more commonly known as the special events permit process. Currently, we have 3 upcoming events that are pending within Cook County, the first one being on Saturday, May 23rd. As I look ahead at the number of people these events bring to our community and some of the uncertainties surrounding the COVID-19 outbreak, I wanted to start with board discussion on this topic as to how we should proceed. There are a few ideas, certainly not limited to the list published, but I could hold on to these permits for now until we see how conditions may change come May or June, which is when the events are that we currently have applications for. I could move forward as we would typically move forward under normal circumstances, putting them through for review and consideration by the board and leaving some discretion for health and safety to the event organizers themselves. Or if we feel we have enough information to make a decision, at least for May's event, I could move forward recommending board action on May event applications as soon as April 14th. Again, the options that we have to manage the risks associated with these events aren't limited to this list, but I felt it was responsible to come forward with this request before moving forward as though it were ordinary business. One note I want to make, and just to clarify the details that I put, this memo was prepared before stay-at-home order was issued, so you'll see in my text here that departments, not exclusively the Highway Department, but also the Sheriff's Department and Emergency Management and Administration, were all involved as a team in reviewing these applications, and we're all requesting board direction on how to proceed with these permits following not only the travel advisory resolution, but now during Minnesota's stay-at-home order as well. Over.
Thank you. So we'll go through a discussion phase by I'll call on you. And if you could ask questions or express your concerns on that and provide direction for us. We'll start with Commissioner Early.
Mr. Chair, could I make a comment?
Oh, excuse me. Sure.
This is Rena.
Go ahead.
I just got an email from one of our staff members who said Le Grand du Nord has been canceled. I hadn't heard that, so, I think we can also anticipate that the organizers of these may start canceling these as well. So it's just a comment to add to the discussion.
Okay. Yep, makes sense. Okay, so with that, any more comments, or I'll just go roll call. we're ready? Okay, Commissioner Storley?
Thank you, Board Chair. I was just looking at a schedule here. If we would do something for May, I believe Kristen said that we'd have to approve that at our next board meeting, which is coming up pretty fast. So I don't know what, that's the only thought I have, but as Rena said, probably a lot of these events are going to be canceled by the chairman of the event. So May would be the first one to consider, and I don't think that looks good. So my thought would be to just hold it in place and at the next board meeting see where we are and maybe skip May and think about what would be going on in June. Over.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner DeShaw?
Yeah, I think with the unknown, with how long this is going to last, we just need to hold on to them until we do know what's going on, so, over.
Okay. Commissioner Dukert?
I have the Scandinavian response of USDA. I did just log in, and La Grande du Nord is canceled, so that's one off of the list. And I did talk to Mike Rateau from the Forest Service just recently, and they were asking, you know, what do they do with BWCA permitting? What's the feel of the county? You know, is the county going to extend an advisory? Obviously, those permits and licenses go for sale on May 1st. And so I think we're all taking it day by day, which is very difficult when we're used to planning ahead and we're used to people applying for their permits well in advance. Considering where the governor is at and that right now we are on hold until April 10th, I think Commissioner Storley's idea of us just holding on to them, reaching out to the event planners and making sure they're still continuing, and then seeing where we are as a state and as a community. It's really difficult to do this when our economic driver is tourism, and we're saying to the tourists right now that we don't know what to do. It's really a heavy weight, and it's really hard for us as a community to not have people coming here and not visiting, and it's really sad to have to look at possibly canceling the different events and our way of life being changed forever. So I'm with Commissioner Storley. I'm just holding off, and Commissioner DeShaw said the same thing. We need to just hold off until April 14th. And obviously, safety and wellness becomes a priority. But for those of you that struggle with mental illness and other issues, having the tourists and the seasonal guests come back to our community also is helpful for our well-being. So it's a really hard decision for us to make, and it's not an easy one to make. So I think a little waiting period would be helpful. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. Thank you. Kristen, could you just lay out, could you lay out the dates again of each event? There's 3. The Grand du Nord is canceled, so there's 2 others, and when are they?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Mills, hearing that La Grande du Nord is canceled, I apologize. I did not receive that message before today's meeting. That moves the next event to Saturday, June 13th, subject to Commissioner Mills and Commissioner Bershein's input, of course. I think where we're at now would be to hold these event applications until mid-May for the events that are currently scheduled for June 13th and June 27th.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Chair, may I?
Sure. Go ahead.
Give my input. Yeah, I see where people are coming from with the delay. My instinct to follow our traveler advisory as well as just the state's direction at this point, is to deny them, just to make a really clear message that we're taking this seriously. However, that I understand that has real serious economic impacts, and we don't want to prolong those more than we have to. But I am primarily thinking about the health and wellness and safety of our community, and just what the events could bring as far as risks are concerned. But you know, I can totally be on board with just delaying, because there is so much we don't know. We don't know how we can deal with the virus at this point, as far as medically is concerned, or what they'll find. But so yeah, my instinct says to deny, just for clarity, and you know, get that message out there. But I am comfortable with delaying as well. That was really long. My apologies. Over.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. As far as my comments, I think right now it's wait and see to see what the state does, because everything is happening at that level now. And when things change at the state level, maybe that's another time we can take a look at this and weigh in on it. But I think I would definitely support just putting it on hold until further developments, and especially what happens at the state level. So with that, I think that was a discussion only. Does anyone else have any comments or statements on this? We're just going to go forward with a hold on this and bring it up when it's appropriate again.
This is Commissioner Disha.
Yep.
Yeah, can we bring it up at the April 28th meeting there, and then we can make the decision whether to deny or to hold them?
We could revisit it. That might be an appropriate time. We'll certainly keep that in mind. Thank you. So that was April 20.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
This is Commissioner Mills. I'm sorry, was that a motion, Commissioner Deshaw?
No.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't read it that way, but Commissioner Deshaw, did you? That was just a suggestion, I assume?
Yeah, that was just a suggestion that we bring it back on the 28th, and we'll make a decision there.
Okay. We'll note that and keep that in mind. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. We'll go to spring load restrictions, and this is to approve a resolution delegating authority to the highway engineer to consider temporary seasonal load restriction changes, and there is some information in your packet on that. And I'll turn it over to our highway engineer, Foster, at this time.
Thank you again, and thank you for the helpful discussion and proactive thinking on the previous topic. Seasonal load restrictions or spring load restrictions are typically a hot topic this time of year in any given year, and I'm bringing this forward today because this might be one year when the highway department is uniquely positioned to administer seasonal load limits differently than our typical process. For everyone's benefit, I think I'll start with what that typical process looks like. Seasonal load restrictions are enacted in the springtime statewide to reduce the damage that full weight loads could, or in some cases do, bring to the roadway system. There are 6 zones within the state of Minnesota, and in Cook County we are in the north zone for seasonal load restrictions. This year in 2020, spring load restrictions started on March 13th, meaning many truckers cannot haul full weight at this time of year. and they're typically in effect for 8 weeks. So without other action, I would anticipate that most truck traffic cannot use our roads again for the benefit of the roads until mid-May. And that's during a normal year. One question that often comes up is, why do we follow the state's process? Why don't we use our own process? We've been exploring that, and we will continue to explore that at the Highway Department. Perhaps there are some changes we could make to next year's limits or the following year's limits. Are there certain roads in Cook County that should be posted for higher weights than what they are? All of those questions are very good questions that we are working on and we will continue to work on. What is different this year, of course, we all recognize that our community is facing a high number of layoffs for other reasons surrounding the COVID-19 outbreak, and that does affect our operations at the Highway Department as well. I currently have some employees who are assigned to do essential services or prioritize essential services compared to the work we would typically be doing this time of year. And what I would suggest is that to benefit the community, this might be the one year when we can take those calls and we can inspect specific routes to reevaluate posting of their routes to make sure that they are what they should be. In some cases, even if we could increase the weight posting of a road for a few days or a couple weeks, that's going to benefit some of our local employees and our local residents, and I can resource that right now. Typically, when we enact spring load restrictions, they're enacted by the state. The Highway Department in Cook County receives the same 3-day notice that everyone in the business community receives, and that's what starts our spring load restrictions. We aren't out there inspecting these roads at the front end, but we certainly could be this year. So with all of that background in mind, I would like to read through the draft resolution before I pass it along for questions and comments. And I would like to make a couple of edits to the proposed resolution following consultation with the county attorney over the past couple of days. All that said, the resolution reads as follows, the title being Temporary Seasonal Load Restriction Exception Permit. I would like to strike exception permit, so it would read Temporary Seasonal Load Restrictions during the novel coronavirus outbreak of 2020. Whereas Cook County is amid a peacetime emergency related to the transmission of COVID-19, which is a novel coronavirus known to spread rapidly among populations without preventative measures, and many businesses are experiencing layoffs to curb the spread of this viral illness. And whereas the construction sector is one of the many areas of our local economy that is vital to the future of the Cook County community, and construction trades are considered a critical sector under Minnesota's Emergency Executive Order 2020, known as the Stay-at-Home Order, and whereas Minnesota State Law 169.87 places a statewide 5-ton axle load restriction unless otherwise posted on unpaved streets and highways between the dates set by the Commissioner of Transportation each year. And whereas the Cook County Highway Department is concurrently undertaking a long-term study evaluating the methodology for implementing seasonal load restrictions, and Cook County recognizes the duration of the spring season or load limit for certain gravel roads may change in the future to minimize the impact of such restrictions on our local economy. Therefore, be it resolved that the Cook County Board of Commissioners sees the local need to give serious consideration to seasonal load restriction exceptions for residential home projects where granting a temporary permit. There I would like to strike the word permit, so it would say where temporarily changing the restriction will keep local residents employed during the novel coronavirus outbreak of 2020. And be it further resolved, the Cook County Board of Commissioners directs its highway engineer to immediately develop and implement procedures that facilitate consideration of requests I would like to strike the word permit again there. Following the above guidance, while protecting Cook County's transportation system from irreparable or costly damage and following the posting process specified by state law. And be it further resolved, the Cook County Board of Commissioners delegates authority to its highway engineer to approve or deny requests for temporarily modifying seasonal load restrictions for effective routes. And be it further resolved, all temporary seasonal load restriction exceptions will sunset no later than June 30th, 2020. A couple of cliff notes from that long paragraph. It would be my recommendation that this only applies to gravel roads as a temporary measure because the damage to paved roads from overweight hauling is more difficult to inspect at a surface level. Secondly, and what I said earlier, this is only something temporary that we're looking at, knowing that we're undergoing a longer term effort to make sure that following the state's process is the best option for the county. And third, how this would work is if somebody wants me or the highway department to take a look at a specific restriction for a specific gravel road, they would call the highway department or send me an email directly. I could have one of the employees go look at the condition of the road every day so that if we need to change the posting a few days from now or a couple weeks from now, we will do so. This will be actively managed by the highway department if the board supports this direction. Over.
Thank you for your work on this. We also spent some time talking about this at the Public Safety and Transportation Committee because there's one request especially that came forward. I guess we've had two of them. Any questions? We'll go by roll call. Start with Commissioner DeShaw. Comments or questions?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Kristen for getting this together there with all the, from our public safety meeting, with all the mass layoffs in the county there. This will keep some people working, and I think it's a good thing. And, you know, I've been in the trucking business most of my life, and I'm kind of like every other truck driver in the county or whatever there. I don't agree with going by the state's date on posting roads. So I'm hoping we can get support for this and get this passed and get some people back to work. So that's all I got.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner DeShaw. Commissioner Dukert.
Yeah, I think Kristen addressed all of my concerns about setting precedent and about going forward and everything else. And I know that we're currently checking the roads, and then those of us that don't normally have the time and luxury to walk around, I've been able to walk down and get my mail daily, and my road is often a terrible road, and it's in beautiful shape. So I think we're going to be okay for doing this year. And that is all I have. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner Storley?
Thank you. Yes, thanks to Kristen for laying out actually the process by which businesses can contact her, either email or calling, and then to the highway department for evaluating the condition of the road, which would be very important. But I know I have spoken to a few businesses who really need to keep on with things that are already in the pipeline for their projects. And so this is good news, and I really appreciate the work that has been done. Kristen, thank you. Over.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. Commissioner Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Commissioner Mills. I applaud the work to put this together and to address concerns brought up by our local truck drivers and contractors. And it'd be great to keep things rolling here. And I agree with Commissioner DeShaw that it makes a lot more sense for us to look at this at a local level and to have local eyes and feet on the ground instead of a kind of a state blanket process. The one question I would have is, you know, I'm hearing that there are people that are waiting for work or out of work, and I was just wondering if smaller trucks and smaller loads can get more people working and still, you know, have a lighter impact on our roads. You know, one of our costs at the county level is significant cost is road maintenance, and so whereas I trust your judgment, Kristen, I was just wondering if that was a way we could win on all sides, and if that's been discussed at all. Over.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mills, right now the resolution is specific to the residential home industry of our local community. In discussion, I think that's something we feel that we can manage with our current resources. It would be more challenging for the highway department to offer this to all industries right now. So we did look at the industries that are especially impacted by the novel coronavirus outbreak and some of the impacts it's having to our local economy. And it is impacting some industries more than others. So I guess it's industry specific right now.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, well, I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution delegating authority to the highway engineer to consider temporary seasonal load restrictions changes as in that resolution she read with the changes. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Commissioner Shaw makes the motion. Do we have a second?
Thank you, Kirk. I second.
Thank you. Any further questions, discussion? We'll roll call vote. Commissioner Bersheim is aye. Commissioner Storley?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
Commissioner Mills, aye. Over.
Commissioner Dukert?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Duchamp?
Aye, over.
Very good, thank you. Unanimous? Yeah? We'll move on to the blanket approval for the COVID-19 related donations, and I believe we're going to turn this over to our interim administrator, Rogers. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. One of the issues that we're dealing with at the EOC right now is a need to take in donations. In the short term, some of those donations are, you know, extra masks that people might have at home, N95 masks that they have a surplus of that they're willing to donate. In other cases, donations involve the homemade mask that we have set a pattern out for, or other kinds of personal protective equipment. Eventually, we'll also probably be taking cash donations to help offset some of those costs, or be used to support people who might be ill. So, generally speaking, and I'm going to have Auditor Brady Powers. Thank you. All of a sudden, all I can think is Auditor Brady, which didn't sound right. Auditor Powers, and perhaps County Attorney Hicken join in this conversation. But in general, the process is, when we receive a donation, is to document that and get it onto the agenda and bring it to the board and have the board accept that donation. Some of the cases, we might need to use those donations quicker than that. And often some of these donations actually could be, you know, a single mask or something. So there becomes a difference in how we might need to handle this. So this is specifically a request to do something that's more of a blanket approval to accept donations as we received them, rather than putting that delay in there. But monetary donations would be, I think, handled the way they generally are. But I'm gonna back away from the edge of this cliff right now and let the people that know more about it talk about it. So I'm going to turn over to Auditor Powers.
Administrator Rogers and Mr. Yeah, a regular process. The state statute, it just simply says, again, by memory, it says in order to use the donation, it will have to be approved by the county board and approved for the use for which it was requested. And in this case, I think that it's under the emergency statute, not the regular statute. I think there is language into that. And it only makes sense that you don't wait for county board meetings before, if the hospital needs an act.
Mr. Chair? I'm
Yeah,
sorry to
go
interrupt.
ahead, I think we don't
I'm
hear,
having trouble understanding. I'm having trouble understanding Mr. Powers. I don't know if
Okay,
the phone is
maybe it's my,
in the different.
yeah, is it better now?
It is.
much
Yes.
better, thank you.
Okay,
Would you start
So-
over, please?
sure. So I was just talking about the statute that I was aware of that we've been operating under, where we bring the donation to the board, and the board is required to accept the donation and use it the way it was requested by the donor. And it makes sense in this case to have this policy because someone, for example, is giving you masks or some other item that you need at the hospital. You don't want to wait 2 or 3 weeks until the next county board meeting to accept that donation in order to use it. So, and it may actually state that in an emergency version of donation. I don't have that in front of me, but it certainly makes sense to do it that way, and I would certainly endorse that.
Okay, Attorney Hicken, do you have any comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Statute 1222 refers to donations received by a political subdivision during an emergency for the purposes of civil emergency management, and authorizes a governing body, such as our county board, to authorize an officer of the county. So that could be Auditor Powers, or it could be the sheriff, to receive those civil emergency management services, equipment, supplies, materials, or funds on behalf of the county, and subject to the terms of the offer. So I think that the action that the board could take here in response to this request is to pass a motion to authorize either Mr. Powers or Sheriff Eliason to receive civil emergency management related donations. There is the condition that that receipt must be subject to the terms of the offer, and that no money or other funds may be accepted or received as a loan, nor any indebtedness incurred except as provided by law. There are some different provisions for the exception, or for accepting real property. I think that would be a special case that should probably come to the board first. So let's limit this to services, equipment, supplies, materials, or funds.
Okay, thank you. So, for comments or questions, I'll go by roll call vote, starting with Commissioner Mills.
Is there a motion, Mr.
Thank
Chair?
you.
I think we'd like to have questions or comments first, please, if that's all right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Commissioner Mills. Attorney Hicken, could you just please repeat what what we're excluding from this?
Real property, so, Commissioner Mills,
Okay,
we're talking
okay.
about land. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I don't have any other questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Over.
Okay. Commissioner Storley?
Yes, that was what I was going to ask. So I'm good with everything except my shorthand is really short. So I think for my sake, I would need to have Molly go ahead and repeat what she said for us to pass this as a resolution. Over.
Okay. Commissioner Dukert?
No questions. Over.
Commissioner DeShaw?
No questions.
Okay, Commissioner Bersheim, no questions, but I would ask Attorney Hicken to please review the statement made previously and sort of summarize that for us so that we all understand the implications of this.
The motion would be to authorize the sheriff pursuant to 1222 Minnesota statute to receive civil emergency management donations in the form of services, equipment, supplies, materials, or funds on behalf of Cook County and subject to the terms of the offer.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask one more time if there's any more questions about that, as she stated. If not, then I would entertain a motion to approve that statement as recorded, hopefully.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Mills. Attorney Hicken, and so the sheriff has been, in the conversation regarding this process and well, it has the resources to take on accepting the donations, etc. Over.
Okay, Attorney Hicken?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Molly Hicken. So the sheriff has been involved in the email strings that we've sent back and forth. I'm not sure if he's on the line now. And I mentioned Auditor Powers or Sheriff Eliason because I'm not certain if there's a specific request for either of them. I understood the request originally to be coming from the sheriff. Perhaps Ms. Rogers can clarify on that point.
So, yes, this is Rena. I wouldn't have involved the sheriff necessarily. The donations are being set up through the EOC, and under the direction of the incident commanders, who is one of whom is Mike Keyport, our emergency manager. So if it needs to be the sheriff or Brady, I guess I would put it under Brady's authority, personally. Otherwise,
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
it does not need to be the sheriff or Auditor Powers, any officer of the county.
Attorney Hicken, so could we insert that instead of having the auditor and the sheriff, that we would have that statement added and understood before we go to a motion?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes, there needs to be a specific individual that is authorized to receive the donation.
so this
Ms.
is,
Rogers, would it be appropriate that that be the emergency manager?
well,
This is Grace. I'm on the phone as well.
Okay, great, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to, in my updates, I was going to give an update about donations, and we do have a process set up through EOC to field calls and emails of people who are wanting to drop off donations, and someone who would process those donations and set up times for pickup. So we have someone within the EO structure that's
EOC structure who is dedicated to donations. We also have Brady in the EOC structure as our Chief Finance Officer. So I know that those two individuals, the person acting as the donations coordinator is Plamen Dimitrov. He's our fiscal officer within DHHS. So the two of them are the two individuals who have been most involved with discussions regarding donations to the EOC up until this point. So I would recommend that they continue to be involved with this motion by the board to authorize donations.
Look on KBGR.
Mr. Chair,
Okay,
go ahead. You want to name a single Brady policy. You want to name a single
Brady, we can't understand you again.
Take that. I'm sorry?
We can't understand you again.
Okay. Mr. Chair, can you hear me now?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Let's shift this a little forward. If you need to name a single officer to that position, I'm more than willing to take that position. And then understood, or you can add it to the motion or something that, you know, it may be physically received at the EOC, but that the donation be, how does it say, accepted by the auditor treasurer. That's fine with me. Just so you know that.
Okay, so, excuse me, this is my phone acting up. Could someone, Attorney Hicken, could you take another try to state what he did in the context of a motion? And then we all understand it before I ask for the motion to be made.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The board would pass a motion authorizing Auditor Brady Powers to accept civil emergency management donations pursuant to Minnesota Statute 1222 for services, equipment, supplies, materials, or funds on behalf of the county, and subject to the offer. If you wish, I can type that into an email and send it to the commissioners. Maybe you have your email in front of you. Over.
Let me just ask the commissioners just to respond. Do you understand what she stated? And are you ready to make a motion on that, or should we go with email? I'll just quickly ask you, Commissioner DeShaw, are you okay with it, or email?
I'm okay with it.
Commissioner DeKirk?
I'm okay with it. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
Commissioner Mills, I'm okay with it. Over.
Commissioner Starley?
Yes, I'm okay with it. Over.
Okay, and Commissioner Bersheim is, so I will entertain a motion to what was proposed by Attorney Hicken. Would someone like to make that motion?
So moved. Dukirk. Over.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a
Commissioner Mills, second. Commissioner Mills, second. Over.
Thank you. Okay, we'll have a roll call vote. Commissioner Shaw?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner DeKirk, excuse me.
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
Commissioner Mills, aye. Over.
Commissioner Starley?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Bersheim? Aye. Unanimous, pass. Thank you. Go on to the Emergency Operations Command Deputy Manager temporary hire. Is our HR Director Dixon going to handle that?
I am here, sir.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning, Chairman Bersheim, commissioners, colleagues, and members of the public. I am here to request approval of a temporary part-time position for the EOC. called Deputy Manager of Emergency Operations Center. This would be a part-time temp position with responsibility for assisting the Emergency Operations Center Director in the daily operations of the Cook County COVID-19 Emergency Operations Center, or EOC, including leading, managing, and directing people and resources related to the planning for, response of, and deactivation of the EOC. This position would be on a salary of $30 per hour, hours being variable and flexible during the time period between March 23rd and the end of the local emergency declaration. Any questions?
Okay, any questions from anyone? I guess I'll go by roll call on that. I have none. Commissioner Starling?
I have none, thank you.
Commissioner Mills?
This is Commissioner Mills. I do not have any questions. Over.
Commissioner Dukert?
No questions. Over.
Commissioner DeShaw?
What is this getting paid out of?
I'm sorry, sir, I did not hear you.
What is this being paid from? I would assume it's the emergency funds.
This is,
Divert that question to Rena.
yep. Thanks,
Okay.
thanks, Pamela. My understanding is these kinds of funds will be, are reimbursable from the state or FEMA once this emergency is over with. So Auditor Powers has set up an account for us to keep track of those things in, and when the emergency is done, we will be submitting for reimbursement.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve this deputy manager temporary position.
I'll make that motion.
Dukert, motion
Commissioner
to
Bell.
approve. Oh,
I think Commissioner Dukert first. Is that correct? Okay, a second.
yes.
Commissioner Mills, second. Over.
Okay, any further discussion? We'll have a roll call. Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Dukert?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
Commissioner Mills, aye. Over.
Commissioner Starley?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Bershheim is aye, over, unanimous. Thank you. And thanks to Jim Winneman for stepping up and joining us. He's a lot of experience in the county, and I'm sure will have a very important role in helping us during these times. So with that, we'll go into our emergency operation command updates with our co-incident commanders, Grace Conager and Mike Keyport. A special thanks to you again for all the work that you're doing. I know I've observed firsthand, listening to your reports and knowing all the work that goes into this. We're very, very appreciative of you and all you've done for us so far, and I'm sure we'll continue to do so. Who would like to start with our update? This is the discussion only. Mike or Grace? Who wants to go first?
Hi, this is Grace. Thank you, Commissioner Bershheim. I'm very glad to be serving in this role. I know it's a very difficult time for our community, and it's my pleasure to work with our EOC and with Co-Incident Commander Mike Keyport to support Cook County during COVID-19. So I'm happy to give an update and then hand it over to Mike for further comments. So I want to start off with a case count. This is as of yesterday. There were 576 lab-confirmed cases of COVID-19 and 10 related deaths in the state of Minnesota. Last week, there were 169 lab-confirmed cases. 2 weeks ago, there were 35. There continue to be severe limitations to testing capabilities throughout the state and the country, so these figures continue to be a very low estimate of actual cases in Minnesota. The biggest news of this past week is that the county's Emergency Operations Center began to function and organize itself under the leadership of myself and Mike Keyport, who are both acting as incident commanders for the county's COVID-19 preparedness and response efforts. As you all know, the EOC allows us to streamline and coordinate all activities to the overall benefit of our community. Per the Cook County Emergency Operations Plan, Mike Keyport acts as a liaison between elected officials and the EOC. However, I'm also always available if any of the commissioners or members of the public have questions or concerns or suggestions for improvement. The lead group of the EOC has been meeting virtually 5 days a week and currently includes Rena Rogers as the Community Liaison Officer, Kimber Ralstead as the Medical Liaison Officer, Lisa Sorley as the Public Information Officer, Pat Eliason as the Public Safety Officer, and Allison McIntyre and myself co-serving as Chief Operations Officers. The branches within the EOC are Operations, Logistics, Planning, and Finance, which are comprised of various sub-branches that can grow and evolve alongside the incident. I'll speak to several activities and that began to organize themselves under the EOC this past week. Behavioral health response. Grace Bouchard and Matthew Baxley, both employees within PHHS, are leading efforts to respond to the short, medium, and long-term behavioral health effects of changes to the community related to COVID-19. Under isolation and quarantine support, I have been coordinating requests for essential services. To date, there have been none, but we have a process in place between the county and Sawtooth Mountain Clinic to support people through essential service provision, which is one of our statutory requirements of the county. Joyce Cleese, who is a nurse representative on our local emergency preparedness committee and an employee at Sawtooth Mountain Clinic, has been my point of contact for that. The area of education and outreach, I've been collaborating with Sarah Hadley within PHHS, Hartley Lucero, employee of Sawtooth Mountain Clinic, and Andrea Orris. Education and outreach efforts have included social media, as well as a project to design and print signs to encourage social distance, that people not enter buildings or businesses if they are ill, and instead call Sawtooth Mountain Clinic. The signs have been designed, printed, and delivered, and are now able to be made available to local businesses and organizations. Some of those have been delivered. I know Andrea has also been in touch with Jim Boyd so that he can further spread the word that this is something that is freely available to businesses. With volunteers, our Minnesota response system is fully operational, and volunteers are actively engaged to support health and safety in our local grocery stores. Through the Minnesota response system, we have 128 volunteers within Cook County, over half of whom have signed up to volunteer within the last week. Andrea Orris is coordinating these efforts in collaboration with myself and Hartley Lucero. We are also trained as system administrators for Minnesota Response. Yesterday, we operationalized the donation system with the support of Flamen Dimitrov, fiscal officer within Public Health and Human Services, serving as our donations manager. Select donations, which have been identified by our healthcare partners, are accepted by appointment only through a unique email and phone contact that was set up by our IT department specifically for EOC donations. We also, this past week, created a community hub site with the leadership and technical expertise of Kyle Oberg, who works with GIS for the county. He has created a site specific to Cook County's COVID-19 response with related community news, including several mapping apps to help officers connect to up-to-date information related to food. This includes school food drop sites, grocery stores, takeout, curbside delivery food options, and information about other businesses, whether they're open, closed. It also includes health information and resources on a local, state, and national level. Through our public information officer, we also issued several media releases through the EOC in the past week. These were related to the EOC itself and its opening, donations, our volunteer system, the community hub site, and the new revised pattern for the hand-sewn masks, which are designed as a means of source control, which means limiting the chance that a person who has COVID-19 is spreading that through respiratory droplets to others. So that is a need that has been identified by our healthcare partners and a pattern that they have recommended for use. That is all that I have for updates this past week. It's been a very busy week. We really jumped right into things, but I've been really humbled by how many people have really stepped up and voiced a desire to serve through the EOC, and also by the support and leadership of everyone who has served within a leadership capacity in the EOC. It's been a week full of activity, but it's also been a week where I've seen many people come together and really start to coordinate efforts to create a strong response for the Cook County community. And with that, I welcome any questions, and then we can hand it over to Mike.
Okay, thank you. That's very impressive and remarkable. All that's been, like I said, trying to build and fly an airplane at the same time. And, so much has been done, and thank you. And you're open all week, 5 days a week, I believe, yes. Okay, so I'll go with any questions or comments for Grace, and then we'll go to Mike Keyport for his report. Let's start with Commissioner Starley. Questions or comments?
Sorry, I have no questions other than thank you, Grace. Wonderful job, and whatever we can do to keep everybody supported is why we are called a community. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Grace. That was a very thorough and wonderful summary, and really appreciate your work and your efforts with coordinating all this, and as well as working with Mike. The only question I had was just about the last kind of update, the last paragraph or whatever, with healthcare workers. I couldn't quite understand or hear you. Could you please repeat that? Over.
Sure. So I believe the last point was the mask design. So our healthcare partners have approved a design for hand-sewn masks that they would like to use for people who are wanting to make that type of donation. Over.
Thank you. Thank you. That was it. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner Dukert?
No questions. Over.
Commissioner DeShaw?
No questions.
I have no questions, but just thank you for comment, and special thanks to you, Mike Keyport, our Emergency Management Director, key role in this as well. So I turn it over to you for your update.
Good morning, Board Chair, Commissioners, and community members. I would first just like to thank you for the temporary hire of Jim Wienan. I think it'll very much help keep the continuity of operations within the Emergency Management Office. I have had a couple concerned citizens about their 911 signs. A gentleman yesterday had an unreadable sign, and he was about to start receiving his medication via FedEx or whatever the other form of delivery, and that's a concern that we have to address. So it allows, definitely allows me to continue with the daily operations of the Emergency Management Office. I concur with Grace that her and I working together has been really well put together, and we're really moving forward. Part of in the ICS structure, part of the main officers that Grace spoke of, when we meet daily, it's considered a daily briefing, and part of the purpose of that is to report out what we've done in the last 24 hours, and furthermore to kind of plan for the next operational period, and it's been working very, very well. I think we included Kimber, of course, as Grace mentioned, from the hospital. That's really helped us, know what they're doing. The hospital knows what we're doing. We're furthermore going to include Ben Silence. He is the chairman of the Fire Chiefs Association. They would like to be kept abreast of what the Emergency Operations Center is doing, and I find that, very appropriate. From the emergency management side of things, I meet daily, virtually, of course, with the regional emergency managers, which comprises of 11 counties, 5 tribes, and the city of Duluth. We also include in that daily call is the Northeast Healthcare Coalition. The Minnesota Department of Health has representation, as does the Army National Guard. So it's a great place to get up-to-date information on a daily basis for the emergency managers throughout our region. Twice a week, I also meet with the State of Minnesota Homeland Security and Emergency Management. They give us just a half hour, and they tell us exactly what they're doing on a state level. They allow for some questions and answers, so it really is a great platform for me to get questions answered directly from the state. It's just up-to-date information. It's extremely helpful. This has been my first experience with a virtual EOC, if you will, and it makes me realize that we can all adapt, and we have, and it works. As Grace mentioned, Grace and I could be the liaisons to the board chair and the commissioners, and I would say if this is the best platform to do that at your regularly scheduled meetings or special meetings as needed, that we can, I'm willing to, and I know Grace is willing to report out at each county board meeting if that's appropriate for you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Yes, I think that would be a good idea as we go forward, and we'll talk a little bit about that in our last item on the agenda. But any questions or comments for Mike from what he presented in his role in this process? So we'll start with Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Mike, for all of the coordination and all the learning curve for you two. So appreciate it. Over.
Commissioner DeShaw?
No questions.
Commissioner Dukert?
No questions, just a heartfelt thank you for everything that both Grace and Mike are doing. Over.
Thank you. Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions. Just want to express my gratitude to Mike for all the work that he's doing and his calm demeanor and systematic approach. Thank you. Over.
Thank you. I really want to commend both of you for your work with the public. I listen to you on the radio and read your reports that come out on the Hub now or other sources. And special thanks to Lisa Sorley for serving in a officer role. And so I think we're very functional. Like I said in the beginning, it's remarkable how this has been unfolding and getting to where we're at, and I think it's very functional. So thank you so much, and thanks to everyone that's making this work. So with that, we'll go to scheduling. Item H, COVID-19 special meetings. I think we would more than likely try to schedule those as board meetings, and I'm proposing that we have updates and we schedule commissioner meetings on all Tuesdays going forward unless notice is given that we cancel them. So that would mean the first Tuesday of the month would be 8:30. I believe the second Tuesday would be 10:30, like our committee of the whole, and then 8:30 on the other Tuesdays. So I'd like to just
Excuse me,
comments from you.
excuse me, Mr. Chair. Mr.
Yes,
Chair?
go ahead.
Yeah,
If you
this
have
is,
something,
this is,
go ahead.
this is Rena. So we generally have our meetings scheduled the second, and third, and fourth Tuesdays of the month. And the third one is currently a committee of the whole. So I think what the recommendation is to schedule them on the first, and if there's a fifth Tuesday of the month, like today is, that we would go ahead and schedule it on that day as well. So in other words, the board would just be scheduled to meet every Tuesday in case, in their role as the governing body of the EOC, that they would need to have items brought before them that were relevant to moving things forward with the emergency. I'm sorry, that's...
Thank you for explaining that. Anything else or any comments from other staff on that? Yeah, especially in the light of these updates that Mike Keyport just mentioned, it's critical, I think, that we provide this time and the public can weigh in on it as well. So I'd just like to go through a roll call to get your reaction or concerns to scheduling meetings every Tuesday, 8:30, except for the second would be at 10:30 when going forward at least into the month of April. So we'll start with Commissioner Mills. Any comments or questions on that? Commissioner Mills?
Sorry, yep, thank you. I don't have any questions. No, I don't have any questions or comments. Over.
Okay, Commissioner Dukert?
It's the third Tuesday that's at 10:30, not the second Tuesday. I just want to make sure the public's aware of that.
Oh,
And
thank
I'd like
you.
the name of it changed from committee of the whole to special meeting. Otherwise, I don't have any
Okay.
concern. Over.
Thank you for your correction. And that's noted. Okay, Commissioner Shaw?
I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. Commissioner Thorley?
I agree. We'll go ahead to do those special meetings on the Tuesdays. Over.
Okay, and I agree. Okay, anything else for the good of the order? We'll go ahead and schedule these meetings, and we'll get out the agendas as in the past, hopefully by the end of the day on the Thursday prior to the meeting on that Tuesday. So anything else from anyone? Okay, just have one.
I'll make the
announcement.
motion to approve that.
Okay. Very good. Do we have a second?
I'll second
Commissioner
that.
Mills, second. Okay. We'll have a roll call vote. Any other further questions? Commissioner DeShaw?
Aye.
Commissioner DeKirk?
Aye. Over.
Commissioner Mills?
Commissioner Mills, aye. Over.
Commissioner Sorley,
Aye. Over.
an aye for Commissioner Bershon. Thank you. Okay, any other business you brought or comments someone would like to make? Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Over.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we will adjourn.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you. Stay in touch.
Rena?
Oh, sorry, Myron. Just killed it.